Notice, and I'm just going to share my screen really quickly. Um, okay. So today is the first workshop series in the Career Academy. So today's workshop will be mostly focused on who am I, and we will be exploring career exploration and how understanding your strengths, identities, and values can lead to making career connections and pathways. Um, Before we go straight into this, actually, I do want to just let you know. We do have some other workshops coming up. So for this week, and give me a second so I can just share my screen with you all. Um, this is the first workshop of the series, like I mentioned. This week, tomorrow, we will also have building a professional brand, and we'll have a resume workshop on Thursday. And then next week, you'll be able to make career exploration appointments with me. So you can have a one-on-one 30-minute session with me to learn more about what your interests, your values are, and how you can navigate higher education. You can also get a one-on-one handshake appointment to learn how to use Handshake. And Handshake is our online platform where students can find career opportunities and employment. And you can also get, you can also get, sorry about that. Um, we'll also be doing an interviewing skills workshop next week. And you can sign up to do a resume review appointment. So have someone review your resume and give you feedback right away. So we just wanted you to know that this is the first event of the sequence. You have lots more opportunities to get help with your career exploration. So I'm now going to transition back to the workshop, so just give me a few minutes, or a few seconds. So, share. Okay. So, just so you all know a little bit about me and who I am, like I mentioned, I'm Berkeley City College's career and general counselor. I am also a first generation Latina college student, so I was the first in my family to go to college. I went 3 years to Los Medanos, which is my local community college in Pittsburgh, California. And then I transferred to UC Berkeley, where I got my degree in psychology and I minored in education. I did have to work while I was in school, and um, one of my counselors during that time, like, kind of told me the importance of, in addition to making sure you're taking the right classes and getting the grades, that I also take the time to explore my interests and values and potential careers that I'm interested in. So I did end up making time to volunteer, do career exploration, do internships. And that was probably some of the best advice I got because as I was taking classes, I was also getting firsthand experience on what I'm interested in. Um, so Sorry, I was just checking the chat. I share that with you all because some of you may be new in your educational journey. Some of you may already have been taking classes already, but in addition to making sure you're taking the right classes and getting the grades, you also want to make sure that you make time to explore what you're interested in because the goal of higher education is that you then land your dream jobs. And it's important to take the time to explore and identify what that is while you're going to school. With that being said, I do want to take some time to see who's in the room. So if you all can please introduce yourselves in the chat, let me know your name and if you have a major in mind, please. So I'll just wait a few minutes so I can get some responses. And if you don't want to put it in the chat, you can also unmute yourself if you feel more comfortable doing that. I see we have Hedda here today. Thank you for joining us. Parvisha, interested in business administration. Hedda, computer science. Ashley's major is political science. Thank you all for being here today. Karen is interested in biology. I just wanted to get a feel for who's in the room and what interests you have. And as you can see, there's a lot of different interests in the room. So thank you all again for taking the time to introduce yourselves. Um, we are going to move on to, so I'd like to give you all a little heads up of what we're going to be covering today. So we've already done introductions. We will then move on to a heat warmer. I'll explain what that is in a second. We'll learn a little bit about community cultural wealth if you don't already know what that is. And then we'll explore a little bit about what your values are, what your interests are, and how understanding all of this can help you figure out potential careers that you may be interested in. And then lastly, we'll do an activity that has you reflecting on the future you want for yourself and how to set goals to meet those to meet that future. Um, if you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to unmute yourself or you can put it in the chat. And then you can also ask questions at the end. So we will go ahead and get started. So a heat warmer, basically, it's essentially the same thing as an icebreaker. And I call it a heat warmer because given today's climate, I try to be mindful that ice can have different meanings and associations for different people. So a heat warmer essentially helps us get comfortable, build community, and ease into conversation. What I'm hoping to learn from you all today is if you can think of one word that can describe your future. So take a few minutes to reflect on the future that you want to create for yourself. And when you think of the future you want to create yourself, what's the first word that comes to mind? So I'll give you maybe about 2 minutes to reflect on this, and then we'll come back as a group. Okay, so if we can share with the group, and I would like to get like maybe at least one or two responses. If you can either type the word that came up for you when you reflected on the future you see for yourself, or you can unmute yourself and share it out loud. Okay, so I see negotiator, stable, success, successful, prosperous. And I do want to thank you all for sharing what came up for you. Each of these responses essentially represents something that's important to you and the future you hope to create for yourself. And as we move through the workshop today, I want you to keep this word in mind, because we will be spending a lot of time exploring your own stories, your strengths, values, and goals, and how that can help shape your educational and career journeys. When picking a career, it's like you all might be wondering why we're spending so much time getting to know ourselves, but it is really important because you essentially want to make sure that you pick a career that aligns with what you value and what you're interested in. Because you're spending all this time, you're investing all this money, time, and you want to make sure that when you complete your educational journey, you're setting yourself up for a career that you will enjoy doing and it can provide you the future that you envision for yourself. So, with that in mind, we are going to move on to community cultural wealth. So, has anyone ever heard of this term before? And you can just say yes, no, give me a thumbs up if you have. And if you haven't, it's totally fine. We're here to learn a little bit more about it today. So, community cultural wealth is an asset-based framework that was developed by Dr. Tara Yoso, and it essentially focuses on the strengths, knowledge, and skills and resources that you bring to the table from fam and that you've gained from your family, communities, cultural, and lived experiences. So a lot of times, when people talk about being successful in college or careers, they often focus on what students lack, like if they lack money, if they lack connections, if they are not knowledgeable about how to navigate higher education. But what community cultural wealth does, it shifts the perspective on instead of focusing on what's missing, it focuses on what you already bring to the table because each and every one of you have a lot of strength, have a lot of knowledge. You have a lot of skills that you bring to the table that you may or may not be aware of. For many first generation students, if you come from low income backgrounds or historically underrepresented communities, there's a lot of strengths that you have that don't always show up on your academic transcripts, but are incredibly valuable in your educational journeys. Um, so So for some examples of strengths that you may already bring to the table that you're not aware of is that you may have learned how to be resilient from overcoming challenges, or communication skills from having to translate from one language to another for your family members. You may have leadership from having to help take care of your siblings or older relatives, or you may have perseverance from having to balance school, work, and family responsibilities. Um, these are just some examples, but this may seem like if you resonate with one of these or if you have other examples, these are skills and strengths that you bring to the table that will help you be successful in college and when you are starting your career journeys. The key takeaway from community cultural wealth is that you have the strengths you need, to be successful. So even if things feel rough, even though you may not have the answers on how to move on to the next step, you have the skills and resources available to make sure you learn that information. Um, I hope that's making sense to you all. And again, if you have questions, comments, anything throughout the presentation, feel free to put it in the chat or unmute yourself because I want to make sure that you get the most out of this and that it's a two-way conversation. So, with that being said, I do want to take a few minutes to do a writing reflection. So, there are going to be a few writing reflections throughout this workshop. As I mentioned, it is important to pause and reflect on what your interests are, what your experience are, so that you can better understand what careers and majors may be a good fit for you. So for this writing activity, I'm going to ask you all to take about 4 minutes to reflect and write your responses. So I'm going to ask you either to write it down on paper or type it out, whatever works for you. So I'm going to have you reflect on what is one challenge that you have overcome? Who or what helped you overcome that challenge? And what strength did you gain from that experience? So I'm going to put a timer. Um, Take the next 4 minutes to reflect on that. Again, either write it down on paper or type it out. And then after the 4 minutes are up, we will come back as a group. Okay, you have about a minute left, so if you can start wrapping up your thoughts, and then we'll get together as a group and reflect on what came up for us. Okay, so thank you all for taking some time to reflect. What I'm going to ask you all now to do is to share one strength that came up for you from your experience. So you can either unmute yourself or put it in the chat, but I would just like to know what were some strengths that came up for you when you were reflecting on these questions. So what I'm seeing in the chat is taking notes and developing good study habits is one challenge. Two things helped taking Counseling 57 and launch program. I feel more confident acquiring these skills. Thank you for sharing, Andre. Um, Manisa, and I hope I said that correctly. One challenge I overcame was continuing my education after moving to the United States. Lisbeth, a strength that I gained is advocating for myself. Thank you all for taking the time to share the strengths that came up for you all. What I noticed is that when you all shared your strengths, and how you overcame them, uh, sorry, I also see Pari, Parivash. I'm sorry if I said that wrong. As a project manager, my greatest strength is combining creative vision and precise time management with strategic business execution to turn innovative ideas into reality. Thank you all for sharing. These are all very different experiences, all different strengths that came up for you all. And I hope that you realize that these strengths are assets that you bring to the table and that you've gotten a lot of these strengths from your lived experiences. So thank you all again for taking the time to reflect. Um, so we will now move on to values. And when you think of values, what comes to mind? And you can either put it in the chat or unmute yourself, but what comes to mind when you think of the word values? And I am going to just say that a PDF will be shared with you all if you want to learn more about community cultural wealth. So it'll be shared in the chat, and then I believe you'll also have access to it afterwards. Yeah, so values is what I care about. Thank you, Andre. So with community cultural wealth, we took the time to reflect on strengths that we have, given our lived experiences, like strengths that we get from our families and communities. Values essentially is what motivates us and what matters most to us. So, um, what I care about, beliefs, principles, those are all true and accurate when we talk about values. So the reason why we're going to talk about values is because when most of the time when people think about choosing a career, the first question that comes to mind is what job do you want? And even though that is a really important question, it can sometimes feel overwhelming, especially if you're still exploring your options or you're trying to figure out what your options are. There's many different possibilities to choose from. Even with the careers and majors that you all have shared, like business, it's very broad, right? But you still have to explore careers and jobs within business. Or I think someone said political science. Like there's so many different career opportunities you could do with political science or with biology, computer science, like a lot of majors nowadays. A major does not equal career. So you still have to explore what type of career you would like to pursue, even if you have a major already in mind. Um, so a good place to start to try to start narrowing that down is by asking yourself, what is important to me? Understanding your values can help you identify education and career pathways that align with who you are and the impact that you want to make. So you want to make sure that you are picking majors, you're picking careers that align with your strengths and values. So Um, so we do have another writing reflection. I'm going to read this out loud and then share a screen with a sheet of values. So for this writing reflection, I'm going to share a values list. And I'm going to ask you all to pick three values that resonate most with you. The list I'm going to share with you is not a comprehensive list of every single value. So if you have a value that's not represented on the list, you can write that down. Um, Try not to overthink it. Just think about which values feel most important to you right now and what values best reflect what matters most in your life. So, give me a moment. I'm going to just share the list. So I'm first going to put it in the chat. Okay, so one moment. Okay, so I put the PDF in the chat, and then I'm also going to share my screen. Um, so I'm going to give you all about 4 minutes again to review this list. Um, Again, if you're not able to view it because the font's too small, I put the PDF on the chat. And remember, you can pick something that's not on this list. So I'm going to set the timer for about 4 minutes again, and then we'll come back as a group. And if you have questions or feedback, let me know. Um, oh yes, and you can also access the worksheets on the drive, on the one that Zaida shared. Um, so go ahead and start looking at this. So you have about a minute left, so start wrapping up your thoughts and then we'll come back as a group. Okay, so thank you all for taking the time to reflect on your values. I do want to just take a second to see if you all can share what was one of your top values that came up for you, and if you feel comfortable letting us know why that value is important to you. So again, you can either respond back in the chat or unmute yourself, but share one value and why it's important to you. So Elizabeth says achievement because I want to do something great with my career and my life, and I want to be able to live comfortably. Thank you for sharing that, Elizabeth. It's important to know what your values are and why, because, with higher education, you are dedicating so much time and effort, that sometimes it's important to know, like, why you're doing this. Andre said financial stability. It is important to me to create generational wealth. Per Parvash said multitasking in tough situations, power for management. Um, so thank you all for sharing your values and getting a little bit vulnerable and explaining like why that's important to you. Ashley is sharing leadership because I have to be a leader for myself and others continuing my career. The more you understand what matters to you and why, the easier it becomes to identify educational and career pathways that align with who you are and the future you want to create for yourself. So, thank you all for taking the time to reflect and for sharing with the group what your values are and why. So, we've looked at what your strengths are, right? We've looked at what your values are, and now we're going to look at what your interests are. Um, as I said earlier, this workshop's not meant to be like the only time you pause and reflect on this. It's it's meant to be like something you revisit throughout your educational journey. So, in terms of values, um, in terms of interest, what essentially uh, what values help us understand is what matters most to us, and what interest does, it helps us identify the types of topics, activities, and environments you enjoy engaging in. So together, they can provide important clues. Um, There's no need to choose a final career today, right? We're starting the conversation on exploring, and the goal is to learn more about yourself. As you grow, as you take your classes for your major and your general education classes, you'll be exposed to different topics, interests, problems. So throughout your educational journey, you may even question if you still have the same goal you did when you first started, and that's totally normal. So it's always important to reflect back on these throughout your time. Um, this, so we do have another writing activity. And again, I apologize for all the writing activities. It's just with Zoom, this is the easiest way to get you all to think. And as I mentioned earlier, I can't give you these responses because it's really individualized based on what your interests are and what your values are. And that's how you will pick a career that's best for you. Um, so we're going to take about 4 minutes again. And what I'm asking you to reflect on, don't think about if you're good at this, right? So I'm not asking you if you're good at this topic, or I'm not asking you if you want to major on this topic. I'm just asking you, like, are you genuinely interested in learning about? So, what subjects or topics do you enjoy learning about? You can think of maybe podcasts you listen to, conversations you like to have with friends or family. What activities do you enjoy doing, or which activities do you want to learn how to do if you haven't started it yet? What issues in your community or the world do you care about? And what type of problems would you like help to solve? Um, so again, I'm going to put the timer for about 4 minutes, and then we'll come back as a group and share what came up for us. Okay, you all have about a minute left, so start wrapping up your thoughts and then we'll come back as a group to share. Okay, so I am going to ask you all to share what is one interest that came up for you when you were reflecting on these questions. Um, so what is the one interest and why are you interested in that? If you don't mind sharing your why. So I'm seeing investing, social gatherings, parties, affordable housing, and homeless. Thank you, Andre. Elizabeth is saying some subjects and topics I like to exploring is the sciences, psychology and sociology included, police work, cooking. I am interested in pondering on writing, reading, learning, a new language, and expanding learning new hobbies. So thank you both for sharing. The reason why it's important to like understand what we're interested in is because that can help inform the type of problems we'll solve when picking careers that we're interested in. So, for example, I am a community college counselor. I really enjoy helping others, talking to people, helping people solve their problems. And by knowing that information, it made me realize like this type of work would be a good fit. Um, I also see investing. I like the idea of learning how money grows. That is very important to know how money grows. I I I would like to learn more about that myself. Um, so we are now going to, and thank you all again for sharing what your interests are and why you're interested in it. I hope you're starting to realize that picking a career doesn't begin by just choosing a title and then, taking the classes needed for that. It really involves taking the time to understand your strengths, your skills, your interests, and your values, and how that all connects together. So, um, what we will be doing now is connecting these pieces together. So, um, career exploration, like I said, really requires you to dig deep on what matters to you. So far today, we've done some exploration, right? So you've looked at your strengths. What do I do well? Your values, what matters to me most? Your interest, what do I enjoy? And now we're gonna see like what are some possible career pathways that all of this may lead to. So I do have a worksheet for you all. I'm going to share it in a second. It should also be in the link that Saida shared. So I'm going to ask you all to list one of the strengths that you identified today, list one of the values, and one of your interests. And then I am going to ask you to brainstorm careers or fields that are connected to your strengths, values, and interests. If you get stuck, excuse me, you can also use Google. So um, let me share a different screen real quick. Um, so this is the worksheet. So if you get, so these are just, this is an example, right? So let's say a strength that came up for you was communication, a value, helping others, and an interest, mental health. What you can do is Google career options for someone whose strength is communication, who values helping others, and is interested in mental health. And Google will literally generate list of careers that you may be interested in. So when I did that Google search, a career pathway that came up was mental health counselor. Um, so you're not going to be able to fill out this whole sheet, but I do want you to at least come up with one career pathway in the next 4 minutes. Um, so I'll put that link in the chat. Um, and then actually, I think I'm going to keep sharing this page. So if anyone has questions or is lost, let me know. But now we're essentially just putting all the pieces together so you can start having some career pathways to explore. So I'll give you all about 3 minutes to do this, and then we'll come back as a group. If you need more time after the 3 minutes, just let me know. Okay, I just want to check in. Do you all feel like you need an extra minute or are you ready to come back as a group? I think we'll come back as a group. Let me go back. Um, I think for this one, if we can get maybe like one or two people to share a career pathway that came up to them while they were either brainstorming or using Google to help figure this out. And this wasn't meant to be stressful. Like, I don't expect you all to have like a full sheet um, completed. It's just to show you how you can start connecting this together. So Elizabeth is sharing the strength was advocating, the value was success, and interest was chemistry. And the career pathway that came up was patent attorney agent. So thank you for sharing. Um, as you can see, there's lots of different tools that you can use, and this may or may not have been a career path that you had in mind, Elizabeth, but it definitely is something that you could look into because it connects some of your strengths, values, and interests together. Um, so again, this was intended to start the conversation, and what we're going to do now is the final activity where we're reflecting on your future and goal setting. So, what I am hoping is that you all leave here today having some tools under your belt that you can use, and also understanding that this is just the beginning of the conversation. So, for the final activity, what I'm going to do is have you introduce you all to a tool called guided visualization. Has anyone ever done a guided visualization before? You could say yes, no, or give me a thumbs up if you have. Um, for those of you who have not or have not heard of what a guided visualization is, it's essentially an opportunity to pause, reflect, and imagine possibilities for your future. So sometimes we spend so much time focusing on what needs to get done today that we don't take the time to think about where we're headed and what we hope to create for ourselves. I do see in the chat, I see, looks like guided visualization is new for some of you. And then Andre, you, for the previous activity, you shared real estate investor and housing consultant, entrepreneur, business owner, labor relations and contract negotiator, financial advisor, investment consultant, and college instructor or workforce development trainer. Thank you for sharing those. So I hope that the previous activity give you all some ideas of careers to look into that may be good fits for you. Um, in terms of the guided visualization, there is no right or wrong way to do this activity. The goal is simply for you to use your imagination and reflect on what a meaningful future may look like for you all based on your strengths, values, and interests that we've explored today. So, what I'm going to ask you all to do, and maybe I will stop sharing the screen for a second. So, what I'm going to ask you to do is to take like a few seconds, and if you feel comfortable, just close your eyes or lower your gaze, and let's just take a deep breath together. So, if you can please breathe in and then slowly exhale. And then let's do one more breath together. So breathe in and then slowly exhale. So I'm going to just ask you all to keep your eyes closed and or lower your gaze while I ask you some questions. So take a moment to imagine yourself about 5 years from now. You've been working towards your goals. You've had experiences in college, maybe internships, maybe work. You're moving in a direction that feels meaningful to you. What does your life look like? Who are you? What are you doing? Who are you helping? What feels different about your life? Now, whenever you're ready, you can slowly start bringing your attention back to the present moment. Um, I know we are running out of time, but I do want you all to reflect on what came up for you. So, maybe just take a moment to think about what did you envision yourself for your education, for your career, for your community, and for yourself. Um, Make sure to write those thoughts down because if you're like me, you might think about it at the moment and then forget about it. Um, and I do want to be respectful of your time, but before we wrap up, I do just want to so we are not able to do the reflection, but I do ask that you do that on your own. If you can please take a picture of this QR code and evaluate today's workshop. We would like to know if you found it helpful and what we can do to improve moving forward. And if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Zaida did put in the chat how you can book an appointment for some of the upcoming events. And I'm gonna put in the chat my email address. If you have any questions about today's workshop or you want to make an appointment to meet, I am a counselor at BCC, so we can always meet up in the future as well. Um, but thank you all for your time today and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you. Then Andre or Par Parivash, do you have any questions today?
Yes, my name is Parvash, and also I want to meet you in person. Is it possible or not?
For the counseling appointments we have for next week, they will be virtual, but I do go back, but during the semesters, the fall semester, we can definitely meet in person. Um, so I would recommend for now scheduling one of the virtual appointments for next week, and then we can make a follow-up appointment and have it be in person. Does that sound good?
Yes, sounds good. Thank you so much. So I
Of course.
I will send you an email and or
Yeah, you can send me an email and I can help you book it. Or on the link that Zaida shared, you can also book the appointment with me for next Wednesday. I
Okay.
believe that's on the 29th. I have openings from 12 to 4. But you can also email me and we can figure out when to meet in person after that as well.
Yeah,
So I can
sure.
share my screen real
Thank you
quick
so
just so
much.
I can show you.
Yes, thank
Um,
you.
so you would, this is the link that I posted in the chat. All you would have to do is go to the one that says career exploration. Click here, and then the date should auto-populate here and select the times that you're available and then put your information here. I would highly suggest that where it says add any special request, write down what you want to meet about so that Norma knows exactly how to best support you. Did you have any other questions? No. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so feel free to book this appointment because this is it's going to be an appointment with Norma. And then if you're interested in any of the other ones, feel free to also select those. They are very limited. They're limited to 1 day, um, mainly because the people who are doing them are only available these days, and also because we want to ensure that, the group that we have here for our academy is able to access them.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so
Hmm.
much.
You're welcome.
Of course, have a good day.
Thank you, you too. Thank you. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye, thank you. Okay.